welcome back to the Old Ways Rising Farm YouTube channel and a pile of dirt. More specifically, this is the Hugel mound that we built together last year. I just wanted to do a revisit on this, talk about where it is, and talk about what maintenance we're going to do with it this year. So last year we built it 2 falls ago as a late season project. We planted it that following spring without doing anything with it, and we planted this with pumpkins. And oh my gosh, did it make a glorious, 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 glorious pumpkin patch. And I apologize, I didn't get a chance to come out here and show that in all of its full glory. I should have. I'll do that at some point. But we got a massive crop of pumpkins off this, and now we're looking at it in its second spring. So we filmed the whole process of creating this thing, and I put a link up here at the top of the screen if you want to go and watch that original video. And when it was made, it was about waist high. Okay, you can see now it's more or less knee high. So it has sat down and shrunken almost, pretty much a full foot at this point. Okay, that's expected. Some of what's going on here is decay, but a lot of what's going on is just settling in, right? One layer, remember how we layered it, like layer of soil, layer of sticks, layer of soil, layer of sticks. So the bottom layer of soil has settled down into the bottom layer of sticks, so then the next layer of sticks is sitting directly on top of the previous layer of sticks instead of on a soil spacer, okay? So it's just settling and nestling in. That's expected, okay? At this stage, here in the second year, we have a couple of choices. If you want this to primarily function as a windbreak, you could go and get more sticks, build up 6 inches of sticks, and then do another whole layer of soil. That would be absolutely legitimate. If you want it to settle down in and just become, a short raised bed, you can completely ignore it and just let it settle on its own, rot and decay, and in 3 or 4 years you'll just have what looks like a raised bed and not what looks like a large mound. Okay? That's also completely legitimate. What I'm going to do is halfway in between those two things. Okay? I know that there will be more decay and more settling, and I want to let that happen for another year, at which point I intend to build it back up. Because I do want this to function as a windbreak. My right, your left, this direction is west. Well, you can see we are after dinner here this evening. So you can see that the sun is setting right in this direction. My shadow's going in that direction, right? That's east, this is west. So we get quite a bit of wind coming across our hilltop here. So I do want this to be a windbreak for more tender crops on the lee side. So I do intend to build this up, but I'm not going to build it up this year. For this year, I am just going to take a load of compost and fill in across the top of this, fill in all of the gaps that are being formed by the layer of logs, which is coming up to the surface because the soil is settling out from around it. Okay? So I'm really just smoothing it off. Got that ground ivy in there. That'll be killed down by the squash vines. I am going to pumpkin patch this again.
Those are really good for weed control.
Yes, yes.
Broadleaves.
So I'm not, when I'm going to grow some big old pumpkins on here, I'm not the least bit concerned about a little bit of ground ivy that only gets a couple inches tall. If that. So I just simply don't care. Okay. Hugel mounds do take a lot of material. There's no question about that. here. Okay, so again, Hugel mounts take a lot of material. That's not a small wheelbarrow. Probably a 6 cubic foot wheelbarrow. It's a little rusty, I can't read those numbers anymore, but it's about what it looks like. And the 6 cubic foot wheelbarrow only did about 3 foot of running width top dressing this mound. So I'm gonna need 8 or 10 wheelbarrows to work my way across. I'm not gonna bore you with all that shoveling. You can see what we're doing and what it looks like. Okay. You can see it is starting to flatten out on top. Next year, this will have settled another few inches and will be even flatter. And that's when I will start thinking about building up another layer of sticks to keep some altitude on this thing. Okay? But until then, this will suffice for the second year maintenance. We have top coated the majority of this mound, and I just wanted to give you a quick little after shot of what the thing looks like fully top dressed. I left the back few feet, 4 or 5 feet or so undressed, so you can kind of see, you know, the before and the after. Couple notes about it. One is, if you didn't see how we made this, I'll make sure that the end screen to this video has a link to the original Hugel mound video, a second video on small scale Hugel mounds if you don't want to go quite this big, and a video on double digging, which is a flat garden technique that builds on some related principles. And you know, they're all building on the same basic biology and soil science, right? Just different applications thereof. It's the first note. Second note is you absolutely have to have the material available to do this if you want to do something at this scale. So far I've used about 8 wheelbarrow loads, those big 6 cubic foot wheelbarrow loads of compost on this. I have 3 or 4 more to go in the back. It's settled a little bit more, so it's going to take a thicker layer of compost in the last few feet. Probably 4 wheelbarrow loads. So that's going to be about a dozen 6 cubic foot wheelbarrow loads just for the top dressing. This takes material, okay? Don't embark on this project if you don't have the resources to put into it. There are other things you can do, like the double digging, that will get you analogous results in a different way, okay? But I encourage you to make friends with your neighbors. If you're living in an area where this is a technique that you might want to apply, I'm willing to bet that you have a farm nearby. And I'm willing to bet that if you ask them to share some of their poo, they would share it with you. You just got to think a year ahead so that it can rot down and won't burn your plants. Okay? That's how I got this. I said, knock, knock, knock. Dear neighbor, when you're cleaning your calf barn, if you need a place to put some of that poo, there's a pile in my yard that could be a little taller. And they said, great. And I came home from work one day and the pile was a little taller, and here's my poo. Right? Talk to people. Especially if you're, if you're recently moved from like a suburban setting to a more rural setting, farmers like helping out other farmers and gardeners as a rule. Yes, I'm sure somewhere there's some grouchy guy who won't help you. It'll shut the door. But you know what? go to the next farm down, it won't be the same. Right? So, make friends, make relations with your neighbors. And a third thing I wanted to mention is that ground ivy that I was talking about. It's actually been very, very helpful making some sod clumps that I could pack in here, and it doesn't get very tall, so it won't compete with my plants. And this is that third point. Don't assume that everything which isn't a carrot is a weed. Okay? Those plants are your friends and your allies. They're not your enemies. They're helpful in many cases, right? Don't just stomp down, grind out, and insist on only having one kind of plant and sterilize the rest of your environment. It's a foolish way to go through life. It's a foolish way to garden. Look around you. Probably the health and help that you need is growing within 30 feet of your front door. It's a thing that happens, So pay attention to those little plants. Take them seriously. That little ground ivy that many people consider a weed and spray all sorts of chemicals on has just been very helpful in building this little mound, and it ain't going to bother my squash a bit. So, perspective. Think those things through. Are there invasive weeds that you definitely want to keep out of your garden at all costs? Yes. If that was garlic mustard instead of ground ivy, we would be having a very different conversation about it. But don't assume that everything which isn't a carrot is a weed. Okay? So, I hope that gives you some ideas and a little bit of an update on what's been a running project here on the channel. I hope that if you enjoyed this, you wanted to give it a thumbs up. That helps the YouTube algorithm know that you enjoyed it and share it with others. And if you're enjoying this content and want to help out, this is an unmonetized, unsponsored, out-of-my-pocket channel. And if you were so interested in helping us build the channel and build this content and wanted to visit our Patreon page, there's a link in the description box below. And there's some great resources there as well for patrons that aren't available in the general channel. So, hope to see you there, and either way, I hope to see you here next time at Old Ways Rising Farm.